cannabis education. But what do you do when you have all of these ideas and know how things could possibly be better? I tossed around ideas with my husband, nurses, and industry colleagues. My first idea was to gut an RV, turn it into a library, and travel around every dispensary, sitting outside ready to welcome in every customer and help them understand their cannabis medicine. When I brought this idea to my husband, he said, why not just use a phone to reach everyone? Dang, he was right. So much easier. But being the entrepreneur he is, his focus was strictly revenue. Sure, we could charge the public for this education, but the idea of a pay-per-minute hotline didn't sit well with me. Why would we charge the public minute by minute on how to use their medicine safely and effectively? I sat on this concept for a while, thinking of ways to change it so it would feel right to me. While these ideas were forming in my head, my business partner, Jennifer Axel, came into the practice, who is a small business developer. I brought the first pieces of my idea to this MD's practice because I'm just a nurse, right? Not a business person. My ideas are good, but could they be great? Then fear of failure sets in and you give those ideas to someone else. I started creating something new for the practice, nurse-focused, and Jennifer worked with me to bring it to fruition. I watched her desperately trying to shape the physician's practice into a profitable clinic. I saw her dedication and talents every day, and I was impressed. Her struggle was with what I had seen throughout my career as a nurse in a private practice. If the MD who runs the practice isn't business-minded, some of the failures for profitability were due to that lack of knowledge and or knowing how to hire the right person and truly let them shine. The nurse-focused part of the practice was working, but I knew it could be better. I started moving closer to my grand idea, so my husband and I proposed my idea to the doctor to join me on this journey, but there was no interest, and thankfully so. I fell into that crutch of always thinking of us nurses as only a support role and not as a lead role. I thought I needed a doctor to make this dream a reality. Little did I know then how critical it would be to partner with an experienced business developer versus a like-minded colleague like a doctor or nurse buddy. I finally decided to take the leap to resign and give this idea a shot. Jennifer just happened to be leaving the practice as well, and I went for it. I asked her to join me on this journey. I'm here today to give you a bit of insight on the importance of nurturing nursing partnerships, and those partnerships should include someone who is skilled in the essential parts of making a business successful. Who here was offered a Business 101 course in nursing school? Not me. My focus was on healing, not the intricacies of building a profitable practice or business model. So what happens when the entrepreneur bug bites? What happens when you see a need, think you have the answer on how to fill that need, but realize how overwhelming it would be to do it all on your own? Well, you first look for someone who shares your values and your mission first and foremost. Then you look around and say, oh man, not only do I not like sales, but I'm not good at selling my ideas. It's completely out of my comfort zone to ask funders for capital or ask foundations for donations. Who is going to take that on? Then you say, oh boy, I know a little about marketing, advertising, creating graphics, creating contracts, etc. But man, I don't really want to do all of that. And don't even get me started on that beast called social media. That is the biggest drain on your time. But as we all know, it's essential for getting your message out there to the masses. These are all the things we don't really want our focus to be on, but yet these talents are vital when it comes to running a successful business. My nursing partnership with a business developer has been extremely successful for these two reasons. One, a mutual respect for each other's skill set. And two, a shared passion and mission. If this was going to be a nurse-run organization, I needed a business partner that could do everything I either didn't want to do or didn't know how to do successfully. But most importantly, I also needed someone that respected the nurse's role and respected our scope and standards of practice. Jennifer fit that need to a T. She has always, from the start, said, this organization is a voice of the nurse, so you make the final call on what we say and do, but I'm going to guide you on how to make that a true business and a successful one. Our partnership has been a success because we set aside our egos from day one and focused on sharing every single aspect of each other's talent so that each of us could be fluent in the language we speak. Jennifer can hold her own around some of the most trained healthcare practitioners because I continually share my knowledge and interactions with our public to her. And in return, I can hold my own in any business setting because she has shared her language and has taught me her skills as well. So here we are, coming together as one unit, fluent in each other's language, respecting each other's skill set, and bringing all of it to the table every single day. I know if I would have partnered with another practitioner, Leaf 411 would not be where it is today. As practitioners, we would be focused solely on our passion, educating and nurturing our public's well-being. We would have looked at every business position in the organization as a second thought, instead of looking at them as equally important to the healthy function of a successful business. My final nugget for nurturing nursing partnerships is to look around. The best partner for you may not and should not be someone exactly like you, but maybe someone who can help take your ideas and develop them into a successful business plan. It's time to take that leap and find that partnership you know you need and is vital to the success of your ideas. No more backseat, no more just a support role, but a leader, an entrepreneur, and a business partner's dream, because you have two different skill sets that are equally important and equally respected. So now you're thinking, how do I go about finding a business partner who is maybe not my nurse buddy or the physician I work for? Up next is my business partner and work wife, Jennifer Axel, who will share her story, give you pointers on how you as well can find a partner, and provide more insight on building and sustaining a successful nurse partnership. In case you were wondering, what happened to my brother-in-law? About 6 months into his treatment, he started introducing cannabis into his regimen with the guidance of Dr. Bonnie Goldstein out of California. I'm thrilled to say that at the 4-year mark, his cancer has not only ceased to progress, but has actually receded at least once. Thank you.
I started in the cannabis industry as a patient. 3 months before marrying my husband, I was in a severe car accident that left me dependent on 13 different pharmaceuticals just to function. Over a 7-year period of time, my quality of life barely improved. Cannabis had just been legalized in Colorado, and I went to my prescribing physician looking for help to get off all of those meds. He was more than happy to refill all of my opiates, but when it came to cannabis, said, I don't know anything, I don't want to know anything, it's federally illegal, I want nothing to do with it, and sent me on my way. That led me down the path to having to educate myself on cannabis therapeutics. So, like many other lay people who don't know where to begin, I consulted Dr. Google. In an attempt to learn all that I could, I took a job working for a cannabis clinician's office, which is where I met my business partner, Catherine. We took her original business idea and created a thriving nonprofit organization that operates the country's first national free cannabis-trained nurse hotline. Together, we built the service I wish had existed when I needed it the most. I'm Jennifer Axel. I'm an experienced business developer, and I'm going to share tips with you on how to build a successful business partnership to help your business dream become a reality. It's important to know what to look for in a business partner. To put it all into perspective, think of it like a marriage, and you are bringing a child into the world. More than just a resume check, you need to look for certain qualities. As I go through the list, it's important to know that an experienced business developer is going to be looking for many of these same qualities in you. First and foremost, passion. Do you share the same values and work ethics? Do you have a mutual respect for what each other bring to the table? And most importantly, once you've identified the hole in the market that you're trying to fill, Do you share a passion for that mission? Take Leaf 411, for example. While working at the Cannabis Clinician's Office, Catherine and I both saw clearly that affordability was a barrier for many people. This is true of the modern American healthcare system overall. Patients get the quality and quantity of care that they can afford and have easy access to. And cannabis was no different. We both believe that cannabis is a journey and that costly visits to a doctor's office leave many consumers with unanswered questions. Catherine and I shared a passion in wanting to challenge the status quo, to do things differently, and we're determined to rethink that traditional business model. We wanted to make affordable education from cannabis-trained medical professionals an option for everyone. We agreed wholeheartedly on our mission. We had to make the service free. Maybe you know someone who is also passionate about your business idea. Before you take the leap into partnership, remember that this is going to be your work wife or husband. You're going to be in the weeds together, pardon the pun. Like a marriage, it's important your personalities work well together. There are a lot of great professional tools that can help you to better understand yourself as well as your partner. Tools like the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, or Strength Finders. Take the time to know your strengths and weaknesses, especially in your skill set, so that you can communicate that clearly to your partner. Enthusiasm and passion go hand in hand. But is this person reliable? If you choose to have a business partner, ask yourself, does this person share your same work ethic? Are you going to put in 100% and the other person can only commit part-time? These are conversations you need to have early on. Catherine's and my successful partnership is grounded in the fact that we trust each other to get the job done. That we are both going to always pull equal weight to the best of our abilities. When the going gets tough, because it will you be able to depend on your partner without question? I'm going to talk more about the entrepreneurial spirit in a minute, but let me begin by saying you need to look for a fellow innovator, someone who can easily come up with fresh ideas. This is my favorite part of the business development process, creative problem solving. In undergrad, I first studied business, then went back to school to study fashion design because I wanted to do something with my life that I thought was more creative. It wasn't until I built my first business that I realized just how much creativity it takes to think outside of the box and create something new, like a business. Thankfully, the cannabis industry gives me plenty of opportunities to flex my creative strengths as we continue to face ever-changing regulatory frameworks. Which brings me to my next point. You and your partner both need to be open-minded. Be receptive to new ideas. This is all a part of thinking outside of the box. If neither of you are open to looking at things differently, your business runs the risk of not reaching its full potential. In addition, you both need to be open to learning new things. While Catherine and I have many different skill sets, in the early days of our partnership, we worked very closely on everything to gain understanding of all sides of the business, not just what we each brought to the table. Share your individual skill sets with each other. In the process of sharing your skill sets and ideas with each other, you are bound to have conflict. It's not a matter of if, but when. Take the time to learn each other's communication styles. Learn how each other communicate best, especially when there is conflict. Do the hard work to keep communication open and communicate well. Not prioritizing communication will inevitably lead to resentment And that is both a relationship and a business killer. Remember the entrepreneurial spirit I previously mentioned? This is it in a nutshell. Find someone who can strike a balance between taking risks and being cautious. There are many brilliant business minds out there who are also risk averse. An entrepreneurial spirit includes being hungry to succeed. Once I get my mind set on a good business idea, look out, because only an act of God is going to stop me. Understand that success is not a straight upward trajectory. It looks more like a series of trials and pivots. Look for someone who is resilient, as you will depend on them to help keep you motivated when the times get tough. If you haven't experienced this for yourself already, let me clue you into a secret about the cannabis industry. Who you know is just as important, if not more so, than what you know. Your collective professional networks will play a significant role in the speed at which your business will grow. That's within the cannabis industry as well as outside the industry. Many of you probably know it can be really hard to find a bank who will do a business with a cannabis company, even an ancillary one like ours. Even though we don't touch the plant and we sell nothing, we still had to utilize our connections to find a financial institution who would take our call, let alone give us a checking account. And don't even get me started on credit card processors. If you don't have any relevant connections, you need to network like crazy and find a partner who does. Now you know what to look for in a business partner. I hope you have also clued in the fact that many of these same characteristics need to live in you as well. At this point, you may be asking yourself, well, that's great. Now, where do I find a Jennifer? Catherine and I were lucky to meet each other at our previous jobs. Start there. If anyone at your work that you already know and trust who might be willing to take this leap with you. If not, check your network in your communities, your house of worship, your book club, your spin class. Ask yourself, who do I know? Look to your friends and family. As the daughter of an entrepreneur who built a large family business, I'd like to throw in a little word of caution. It can be hard to separate business and family in your day-to-day. But that was my experience. You may find your spouse is the perfect person to partner with in business, as in life. If all else fails, put the word out. You can let people know you are on the lookout via social media or LinkedIn. Networking is the best way that business gets done in cannabis. Attend industry networking events and network like your future business depends on it, because it probably does. Our nonprofit organization has only gotten this far because of the solid business partnership that founded it. Because of that, we are providing affordable and accessible healthcare to the masses, serving the underserved in a way that has never existed before now. I challenge you to also rethink the American healthcare model and how the right partnerships can bring your business idea to life. How can your idea also be the first of its kind?
It's my pleasure now to have on the stage Nurse James Schwartz and Nurse Heather Manus. And James is currently part of the NCIA Cannabis Cultivation Committee and has presented cannabis topics to multiple audiences at conferences including Cannabis Science Conference, the Portland Hemp Fest, Cannabis Convention, and Educational Industry Mixers. Nurse Heather has vast knowledge and holistic approach to individualized patient care and has been the cornerstone of her success as a nurse, educator, entrepreneur, and promoter of health. Join me in welcoming these two experts to the stage as we learn more details.
Thank you, Maureen. And you all are in for a great treat to hear from Nurse James today. He is an incredible entrepreneur. He's been doing entrepreneurialism before he became a cannabis nurse. And so we're going to discuss a few things today that will be hopefully very valuable to you who are trying to embark upon this cannabis nurse entrepreneurial adventure and journey. So the first thing I would like to ask you, James, as we get going here, is how do we bridge the gap from clinical nursing to the business world? I'm sure there are a lot of nurses here who are either working in facilities or doing something within the healthcare system, but they're now starting to understand that maybe creating their own business or entering another type of field like the cannabis industry would be valuable to them, but they're not sure how to bridge that gap. How would you suggest they bridge that gap?
So, Heather, I'm going to say a few comments, and then we'll dive into the real entrepreneurship side of things.
Please do.
So, one, I've been a nurse since '98. I've been cultivating cannabis in Oregon since 1999. I know a lot of questions came out initially, or I've heard throughout the conference. You know, how do I start to talk to my patients about it? I've got hospital policies that I have to address, or I work for Sisters of Providence, or, you know, so the first thing that I did, because, you know, Oregon was the second legal medical state, '98. So I, as someone who believed in the power of cannabis, who had cannabis change my life, knew that I needed to be talking to my patients about it. And so in Oregon, it was a little more comfortable because we had medical, but just as with all of these states who have come on with medical, you have to understand it was a touchy subject no matter where you were. And even at places like Kaiser now that fully embrace cannabis therapeutics, it was difficult to want to talk to your patients about it early on. And so one of the first things that I started doing was when I heard a patient that I knew could be helped through cannabis, I didn't push them into cannabis. I simply told them, hey, here is an option that's out there, and I suggest you research it and take that back to your practitioner. That was a way that you can encourage them to seek the options that are out there while not being very gentle of that boundary between what that hospital policy is on promoting cannabis as therapy, and also, you know, allowing your patients. We have to advocate. We are educators of the patient population, and I really consider us all consumers. Ethan Russo, whose name has been mentioned several times, I think the world of him. Clinical cannabinoid deficiency syndrome. It's real. Ethan has scientific evidence of it as part of his work with GW Pharmaceutical, which we can get into GW Pharmaceutical, but that's a whole nother topic. But the work on connecting the dots between clinical cannabinoid deficiency syndrome and a lot of the chronic illnesses, ailments plaguing our population today, irritable bowel, celiacs, Huntington's, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, down the line, we know there's connections now. And so we need to be feeding that ECS with those phytocannabinoids. But as you've heard, there are many ways to address those with a non-psychoactive effect. You can use your THCAs, your CBDs, your CBNs, your CBGs. And one of the things I like to correct patients on or consumers on right from the beginning is CBD opens the door, but whole plant medicine is where the reality of things are at. We know that terpenes and cannabinoids work together. The way those terpenes affect cannabinoids is they actually modify the receptor site in the ECS so that now it's binding to a different cannabinoid. So if you look at the 40 known terpenes that we really know about and the 140 cannabinoids that we actually know about, you have to multiply those together to begin to understand the therapy that's out there. And so the next thing that I kind of heard today was, how do we start to get data? Entrepreneurship from a business side of things. So we know with cannabis that different terpenes and different cannabinoids affect in different ways. We know that that different extraction methods of how that product is extracted affects the plant and the potential in another way. So whether it's a CO2 extraction or a butane hash extraction or an ethanol extraction, we know that that actually affects the cannabinoid complexes that are in that therapy. So it's really important for us, as much as we can, down to ingestion method. Ingestion methods, another massive variable spectrum between the products that are out there and how you're ingesting, whether it be a suppository, an edible, a tincture, a vaporizer, and a normal inhaler. So it's so complex, and this medicine is so complex, and the endocannabinoid system is so complex that we're starting to gain knowledge. But that knowledge has been hammered down. It's been kept from the public for a long time. GW Pharmaceutical has some of the only real hard data through their work at the only federally legal cannabis farm on the campus of Old Mississippi. So I think that when we start to talk about entrepreneurship, that we have to look at how broad this field is to begin with and how we can begin to understand it. So I don't mean to monopolize things. I just wanted to really touch on some of those issues. So when we get into the entrepreneurship level, the first thing is focus. Stay focused on what we know how to do, what you know how to do, what your area of expertise is, and then figure out those ways that you can begin to bridge your clinical career into that business side of things. So for me, one of the things that I did, I've been entrepreneurial my entire career. About 7 or 8 years ago, I started doing medical legal consulting for attorneys. That was one way I could directly apply my medical nursing knowledge to a business practice of taking care of patients. So I always look at the medical legal side of nursing as, how do I educate the attorneys? How do I protect and be a patient advocate for the patients that we've wronged? Because we all know accidents happen, and they're generally not misintended. They're just mistakes that happen, largely because of communication breakdowns. So look for those opportunities where you can begin to take yourself out of just a clinical environment, move it into a business side of things. Attorneys are very well qualified, generally know lots of business consultants, those kind of things. So that was an area for me. But as you're looking into going into your business, seek out people like Ken or other attorneys that may be in here. Begin to talk to them about how you need to protect yourself. So first thing I would suggest to everybody in here, if you don't have your own nursing liability insurance, that you should. It is critical, because you're gonna start to take yourself out of a protected environment like a hospital, and where you're gonna need to go now and practicing in your own. So protect yourself in the insurance side of things. I think that gives us a good start.
Yeah, that was really phenomenal. Thank you for that. I know James has been very successful in what he's been able to do, and I know each one of you in here can also be successful if you're able to, like he said, take your skills, your passions, and start transferring that into another bit, including the cannabis industry. So when you are creating your business, I know that as nurses, we're not taught how to be entrepreneurs. We're not taught business. So the first thing that they need to know is what? How do you start to create your business?
So as I alluded to, first thing is focus. Determine what the problem is that you want to solve. I hear a great number of nurses who want to be cannabis nurses, quote unquote. And I want to just technically, for the record, as the Nursing State Board has begun to get on me, I am not technically a licensed nurse anymore. I let my license lapse as I fully moved into cannabis. So just for the public record,
Is that new?
it is.
How new is that, James?
So my license actually expired a year and a half ago, but I hadn't actually known because I've been so engrossed and hadn't paid attention, and then all of a sudden,
Was
the
that a
nurse-
focus thing you said earlier? What about focus?
I was laser focused on the task at hand, which was making sure I had a successful cannabis farm, and kind of had left nursing aside, mostly because I hadn't done anything clinical in 5 years. So focus. Find the problem that you want to be the solution for. Determine how you're going to provide that solution, and then create an executable plan to get there. All good businesses start with a plan. If you have no plan to work from, you're just going to be in a reactionary state the entire time. And you need to be proactive. You need to be figuring out, okay, if I'm in San Diego, or if I'm in Oregon, or if I'm in oncology, or I'm in hospice, what is the problem that I want to create a solution to? How do, and for lots of us, that's cannabis nursing. How do I bring cannabis into my practice? So that's understanding the framework that you're going to be operating in, whether that's, am I going to be a clinical nurse specialist at a hospital? Am I going to be talking to my patients in hospice about cannabis as a solution? Figure out what that problem is, make an executable plan, and then follow through on that plan and stay focused on that plan. Make sure that you're allowing yourself to go back and revise that plan, see what's worked, see what hasn't worked, and then apply those changes so that you can further that business forward.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, so you had mentioned that there are some issues surrounding the actual touching of the plant. And when nurses are trying to go into the cannabis industry, they need to understand that there are areas where you do not touch the plant, and there are areas of entrepreneurship where you do touch the plant. Can you give us a little more information on that?
So, as many of you are beginning to understand, depending on where you're at with your journey with bringing cannabis into your therapy and your practice, touching the plant means anything where you're directly related to that plant material. So whether you're a grower, a processor, an edibles company, a retailer, I know that we're moving beyond kind of the medical side of things and into an adult use side of things, but this is how states kind of generally transform. First of all, if you're gonna touch the plant, be ready for all of the challenges that you will face. So there is no banking as of yet. Now I have a very strong opinion that we will see banking this year. That will be, get rid of a huge obstacle to the business as a whole. However, it's going to allow the walls to crumble around the state laws, and you're going to see a lot of powerful business influence begin to take over the industry. We're already seeing pharmaceuticals very involved, some directly, some indirectly. Baxter Pharmaceutical is now the distribution company for Acreage Holdings. That's a major pharmaceutical company getting involved with the distribution of cannabis products. You see Constellation Brewing, who bought a 40% stake in Aurora Growth Corp in Canada. You're seeing Pepsi and Coca-Cola start to get involved. And so these barriers will start to come down quickly. We are on the forefront of the medical side, and I am so encouraged, and I meant to say this earlier. First, well, not first anymore because I've been talking for 15 minutes, but I want to thank Heather for what an amazing job she's done putting together an amazing conference.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of the volunteers that have helped make it happen. These conferences are not cheap. Everybody needs help in no matter what they're doing. One of the things I love about nursing is we're so focused as teams together. Yes. That really helps us combine our resources. And thank you to all of you for maybe stepping out of your comfort zone to come and join a movement that, as you've heard over the past 2 days, is an amazing opportunity, both for us as healthcare practitioners as well as for patients. The number of people dying from opiates is ridiculously absurd. In 2015, they did a reflective critical analysis of the literature. In the states at that point in time, there was only 33 states that had some form of medical cannabis. In those 33 states, there was a reduction of opioid overdose deaths by more than 30%. There was a reduction of opiate prescriptions by 37%, and a loss of $186 million to the pharmaceutical industry. That is a real number, and they are paying attention. So know that they are going to come in and they're going to hit the market hard. But you guys are the face, you're the interaction between the pharmaceutical company or the physician and that patient. And you guys have to be educated. We have to provide good information. We have to provide information that's on the forefront, but also make sure we're defining that, look, we have not had access to long-term trials. We have not been able to do double-blinded studies. So the information that's out there can sometimes be minuscule at best, sometimes anecdotal, and sometimes totally non-existent. But we need to be aware of that, so attending events like this, following those sorts of sites that produce good scientific information. I'd seek out other conferences that produce really qualified scientific information, and bless Heather for being one of the people who's willing to put herself out there in a real medical community, because as you've heard, doctors don't even learn about the endocannabinoid system in medical school. It is the modulating system for the body, and doctors don't even know it exists sometimes or won't talk about it. That's ridiculous. I mean, talk about government propaganda forcing big industry to do whatever it is that they'd like them to do, whether it be the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association. So I divert a little bit. Touching the plant can be difficult, so make sure that you're understanding of what are the state requirements in your state for being involved in a cannabis business if you're touching the plant. If you're not, the regulations are going to be much easier to deal with. If you're, depending on how you're going to classify yourself, you can get access to banking. You can still have insurance. There's those other things. But be aware when you're formulating that plan to factor in, are you going to touch the plant?
And you'd made a really good point about some of these, the stock market type groups. And that is one way that as nurses, if you're looking to invest, it might be kind of fun to go and look at what are some of the stocks that are going on the market if you play in that realm. It's just another opportunity for you to invest your money in something that could potentially pay off. And I think that's what entrepreneurs are trying to do. And that's one aspect as well. I don't play in the market personally, but if it's your bag, have fun. So you had talked about focusing and planning and really sticking to your plan and following it through. What's involved with creating or writing a business plan?
So you see a few of the main topics here. In addition to the other general synopses that are in your business plan, whether it be your executive summary, that's going to typically be your one page about your business when you're looking for funding, or whether or not that's your quick summary of how you're going to operate as a company. The next thing you have to understand is your business and revenue model. How are you monetizing whatever it is you're going to do? How are you monetizing that? It's really important. We all are nurses, we're all giving. I would love to be able to work for free, and in fact, I do.
I was going to say, I think all of us probably do from time to time.
Make sure you understand what your revenue model is. Who are you going to bill? Who are you going to be your paying customers? Who are going to be your third-party salespeople that are going to help spread that word? So if you're wanting to be a home health type of cannabis nurse who's going to come in and educate patients or help deliver cannabis therapy, figure out, are you going to look for referrals from hospitals, from other visiting nursing associations, from dispensaries that are in your state? So figure out what that revenue model is for you, because we all need one. You can't be out there providing good work if you're not getting paid. You're not going to be able to sustain that. Do your market research. Who else is out there doing that? Who is your competition? What does the competitive landscape look like? So you really need to be familiar with what it is you're doing, who else is doing that, how are they billing for it, do they have a poor revenue structure model that you could do something different from, and then how are you going to market yourself? How are you going to get yourself out there so that people understand how they can find you and retain your services?
So the next slide really talks about your revenue model, and I clicked over to it since you started speaking on that. Do you want to continue on discussing the revenue model based on this slide here?
I would just kind of further it a little bit, so if you're providing care to patients, are the patients paying you directly? If you're working for a health system who appreciates cannabis therapy, and they're few and far between, and to my knowledge, not very many who are paying nurses to go out and talk about cannabis. So figure out what that revenue model is going to be. How are you going to bill for services? Do you want to do direct billing to patients? Can you find insurance companies that are willing to assist you, maybe under some exemption about, there's certainly with home health care, like you can hire an unlicensed home health care person, and in certain policies, you can get people paid for that. So are there opportunities that you can bill insurance companies for what you're going to do? Maybe you're not going to call it cannabis therapy, but you're going to call it medication pain management or other sort of key phrases that are going to be acceptable to them. But just be careful then, if you're doing that, you know exactly that line that you can't cross. And that would be about it. Who are you supplying? Who are you providing that service for, and how are you monetizing it?
So we all know that as nurses, we have governing bodies. As entrepreneurs, we also have governing bodies. Which regulatory bodies govern us, James, as nurses wanting to be in the cannabis industry?
So certainly be familiar with your state board of nursing policies. It's critical.
And remember to keep your license updated.
Yes, it varies. You hear a lot of talk. I would go directly to the source. I would make sure that you're seeking out that really educated, informed opinion about where your state board of nursing falls. Even using cannabis in an adult use state like Oregon, to my knowledge, they could still reprimand your license and you could be put into a diversion program or anything else, which is ridiculous because the general population can use cannabis, so why can't nurses? Especially given we know the therapeutic potential of it. If you're in hemp, you're generally going to be overseen, most of your products are going to be overseen by Department of Agriculture. If you're touching the plant in your state, what sort of state license is required? Who is overseeing that? So in Oregon, you've got the medical side of things, which is generally governed by the OHA, the Oregon Health Authority. The adult use market is governed by the OLCC. The hemp market is governed by the ODA, but you've got crossover between all of those. You've got hemp-derived CBD products that are entering the market into the medical side of things. You've got cannabis products that patients are using. And so it's very important to understand who are those regulatory authorities in whatever jurisdiction, state, zoning area you're in. The next thing is that banking that I talked about. If you're in a cannabis-related business, your tax code is called 280E, and it was created basically around Al Capone and how he evaded taxes and how they eventually caught him. It basically says that only cost of goods sold are business deductible expenses. So if you're touching the plant, and touching the plant could be providing CBD products. Now, it's a really muddied water for CBD right now. The Farm Bill last year changed things significantly. Technically, CBD is still Schedule 1. However, I was just reading an article just today from someone else who showed it to me out there that Gottlieb, who's in the government right now, has started to realize that there's a lot of work to be done to navigate the CBD water. You've got federally subsidized hemp farms that are producing a product that is still technically illegal. It blows your mind. But 280E tax code is really expensive. You can expect to pay 40, 50% in taxes, no question. And so as you're building that revenue model, as you're constructing your business, if you're going to be involved in touching the plant, be very clear about where you're at in that tax code, because it could make or break your business from a tax purposes. And the last thing we'll talk about there is human resources. I think for most of us, initially, you're contracting yourself out, you're providing your service. It's much easier to regulate what's happening with that as your companies grow and you've got employees. For me, in a cannabis business, I'm a cash-only business for the most part. I pay my employees in cash. I have to allow my employees to handle cash and product and everything else. Figure out what that strategic hiring method that you're going to do. What are those sort of qualities? And I can look over maybe not as hard a work ethic if I know I can trust that person. That when I leave my farm and they've got to deal with $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 in cash when they go to a dispensary, or whether it's dealing with 20, 30 pounds of trimmed weed that's ready to go, you're talking about significant trust. So make sure you're hiring trustworthy people. Make sure you're putting in place those checks and balances on all of your people. It's an important part of business. And
training is really important when you start to grow, when you have employees. So I know we're coming to the end of our time for our interview. It's been so wonderful hearing from you. Do you have any words of advice for all these cannabis nurse entrepreneurs here that are wanting to endeavor upon this journey? The word of advice I put here, which says you have 3 basic needs if you want to be an entrepreneur in the cannabis industry. You need to have a backbone, a wishbone, and a funny bone. Because sometimes you need to cry or laugh when you would rather cry. What words of wisdom would you leave our cannabis nurse entrepreneurs with?
I like yours. They're very cute and absolutely apropos. So one of the things that I talked to Dr. Bleshing about, one of the things that we've left out of all of those variables about cannabis therapeutics, the one most important thing that I believe in is know what farm it comes from. And so traceability in products is key. It's much easier for us in cannabis because we're required to track and trace our products. But for instance, in Arizona, there's not traceability of products in Arizona in the medical market yet. There's no traceability of CBD. So these companies who are putting out CBD products, half the time, I don't even know if there's CBD in them. As well, then where did that CBD come from? I care less about what strain or even maybe the chemotype than I do what farm did it come from.
And that's definitely a great place to end on a note of quality matters. Quality matters in the products that our patients are getting. Quality matters in our companies and our businesses that we are developing. Quality matters in the people who represent our companies and businesses. Thank you so very much, James, for being with us here today.